happen to the USA. Without wasting any time, Russel-J Gould and David Wynn Miller. Folks, I'm not going to refer to these gentlemen in this way, but when it comes to a grammatical construct that locks any agreement, treaty, or contract into legitimacy in perpetuity, whether it's for 10,000 years from now, or you go back and you reconstitute everything ever written in this quantum grammar system, in this proper grammar and syntax method, then whatever's said or written today means the same 10,000 years from now under any circumstances. So when you pronounce Russel-J Gould's name, it's Russel-J Gould, and David Wynn Miller is David Wynn Miller. I'm not going to refer to him that way, but they both went at this point in time when they discovered the expiration of this contract, of this bankruptcy in 99. They went right to the Pentagon, inquired if anybody had the patent on the original Title IV flag, which was the only flag to be legally entered at the UN for this nation. Nobody had the patent. So Russel-J Gould secretly acquired the patent to the Title IV flag, raced to the UN to register the flag. And of course, I remember learning about, at that time, they said, well, it has to be tied to a certain land, but all the lands of the world are taken up. And he showed him the documents. No, this land of North America isn't. It was in that 18-day period where if nothing happened in an 18-day period, then the British Crown would automatically inherit the United States again. So at that time, he registered the flag. He registered his new quantum grammar construct, thereby creating a brand new global federal government. The UN then gave Russel-J Gould sovereign status. And the moment this happened, it invalidated the authority of the entire evil monarch right down to the bloodlines. In essence, they've had zero control or authority since that very day. Everything since that day in 99 has been nothing but an illusion and a complete psyop perpetuated on we, the American people, by the Clinton-Bush cabal and everybody that's been in power since then. So for 18 days, when we stood open for capture with no one holding title or control of the Washington, D.C. post office or international trades, that's when he made his move. So they seemingly forgot about the post office and how imperative it actually was. In 1899, the 1899 post office on Pennsylvania Avenue was the original post office. It held the greatest amount of authority under the crown. And whoever had tactical command of this post office had full control of all trade and commerce in all of North America. The Postmaster General, by the way, folks, is probably the most powerful person in the country by contract, by constitutional law, because it is that post, the Postmaster General, is the one who can sanction all trade on that particular continent. No trade, there's no country. After Russel-J Gould returned from the UN, this is back on August 12, 1999, he stood Title IV flag right at the original D.C. post office, thereby activating the new global federal government, essentially taking tactical command of the entire planet, including the global militaries. Now, here's what's interesting. He worked so fast, he didn't inform the U.S. military. To his actions, nobody knew what happened. So Clinton and the cabal continued their power control scheme on the world and secretly tried to steal the flag. He actually moved fast, but he did then align with the U.S. Navy. That's when he first got into a situation where he had some measures of backing and protection. Because at that point in time, there's no way to finance a Navy. There's no way to finance any military movements. If there is no right of commerce, and of course the U.S. Navy is commerce, it takes money to move those ships. There has to be a controlling authority to move ships. People were sitting in port with no country during that period of time. Of course, he turned all that around. But anyways, when Russel-J Gould did have this flag, of course, they nearly beat him to death trying to force him to surrender the flag, but he refused. But because of the authority worldwide that he now had, along with specific top secret access codes, they couldn't actually murder him unless he surrendered. So these two guys were unbelievable heroes. But from that point on, the cabal went to work to install their new world order plans. Putting, the Bushes were already in power. Clinton, was put in power. They ran up through with Obama. And here we are today, but they were creating a psyop on our world. They were ensuring that nobody would ever find out what really happened. I never heard about it until this past year when I stumbled across it doing some research. So they created fake flags, a new private corporation to continue running the USA while they're placing each NWO U.S. president in power from that point, utilizing the fake non-registered flags with every move they made. It's all illegal. They orchestrated these events. They conned the population into believing there was a threat to our country, push us toward a new world order. So they had the attacks, the false flag attacks, using our military, NATO allies to invade the Middle East, collapse governments, all the banks that refused to go along with the new world order. And you hear me talking about the bankers of how, they basically own the Pentagon. They own the military. I mean, they're the ones that send our military around the world doing what they do. And I came across this real short clip by General Wesley Clark. He was talking about orders that were given to the U.S. military 10 days after the collapse of the towers. And you can hear it for yourself. Listen to what he says.
And 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me. And one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, No. He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They've just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
So when you listen to him talk about that, I've mentioned that in the past about the Bush cabal taking down a number of countries, the Obama cabal. This is what they've been doing, folks, unnecessarily with our nation for a long time. So anyways, in the 90s, Harvey Barnard tabled a bill that would reform the financial system. We talked about, NISAR, how that worked, the National Economic Security and Recovery Act. I still think that's in play, obviously. And then what we learned about was it was reported that Clinton was to silently pass NISAR. He didn't do it on his own terms. He did it at gunpoint. But this would pretty much free us from this enslavement of the central banks. But my question is this: did the U.S. military have knowledge by that point of what Russel-Jay Gould had done for the months prior? Did they know that this hero saved America and the world from its demise? That would be interesting to know. But they knew something. They knew something. Because if Bush Senior CIA could beat the hell out of Gould to get him to surrender the flag, they have to know it. The NSA knows it all. So with Gould utilizing his experience in quantum grammar, law, and proper syntax, he rewrote every federal contract law that stands in every single country, utilizing factual, now-time quantum grammar and proper syntax, meaning in 100 years, these laws would still be read as today. In doing so, he created a completely new global federal government system for the entire world. It is based solely on truth using mathematically certifiable grammar. So anyways, if you look at what this would mean to not just the United States of America, but the entire world, what that would mean if we could now lock, when we've seen this in business all the time. I say this to people that I do business or business partnerships with. Listen, I only do business with people who I know they can keep their word. If your handshake means nothing, then neither does your signature. It just tells me how much money I have to spend to try to make things right. But now we could actually have contract law in every way, shape, or form that would hold government to what their responsibility is and hold all business contracts to what they're agreed to, and people can't worm their way out of it. So anyways, moving forward here, when they decided to form this new corporation for the government to actually govern the United States, I was going to say rule, that's probably more appropriate. But Congress, under no constitutional authority, created this separate form of government, the District of Columbia. It's a new corporate government known as the United States, all capital letters, by the way. And let's had an iPad freeze here. All capital letters. I'll explain what that means here shortly. But the construct, this was a construct of the British Crown and the Vatican. Okay, I had a friend of mine back in 2010. I was working with some friends up in Provo, Utah, and a guy was a BYU grad, former track star at BYU, brilliant programmer from Nigeria, he made a lot of money. Kid was a college kid driving a Lamborghini. I learned at some point in time he was moving money around, I think for some of the nefarious forces on the planet. And he drew some things out on a marker board one night in the office, and he said, I remember him saying, "Man, you're still controlled by the British Crown." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" So he drew this elaborate construct. In fact, I was with him once when he was making a call to David Rockefeller, the true evil of the planet, who's not on the planet anymore. But anyways, we've always been under their control, or at least in my lifetime we have been. But so our original Constitution ends up becomes altered, defaced when his title is captured, and then during the 1871 alteration, when they did this, it was incorporated. It was a corporation they created, not a constitutional republic, we the people, a corporation. And what we learn is, in reality, all words matter. This is by October 22nd, 1871. The whole nation and every one of us, or them back then in it, was secretly captured in a war. It was considered a war act, where everyone and everything was placed under the international jurisdiction of admiralty and maritime law of the sea. I'm going to cover this in depth for a minute so you understand. This was all in a global warfare effort to control all commerce on the planet. What does that mean? We think we live under common law, and we don't. We live under admiralty law. Here's what admiralty law is. Admiralty law, also known as maritime law, is a system of law originally codified by the Republic of Venice. Those are the Venetians in Italy, from the 11th century, and subsequently refined over subsequent centuries, governing the operation, ownership of vessels on the oceans, transport and insurance of cargo, commerce, bills, navigation, liability, liens, and finance. Admiralty law is a foundation of international law, ultimately known as private law. The word maritime comes from the early 13th century combination of two Latin words. Mare means sea, and timeo means fear, meaning literally sea of fear or fear of the Holy See. Who's the Holy See? The Vatican, the Pope. An extremely off-world to define a form of law of the seas. The formation of the private company owned by the Venetians through the Franciscans, otherwise known as Holy See, was officially formed through a ceremony in 1250 between the head of Franciscans Doge Giovanni Bernardini Marco Morosini and Pope Innocent IV in a boat dedicated to Satan called a bucentaur, which is a beautiful centaur is what it means, near St. Mark's Square, when the Doge threw the papal ring into the sea during a formal Roman cult religious ceremony, at which St. Francis was the first to ever usher in Desponsimus te mare insignum veri perpetuique domini, whatever that means. We wed the sea, we wed thee, sea, in the sign of the true and everlasting Lord, declared Venice and the Holy See to be indissolubly one. This is all leading up to a point. The renewal of the wedding vows between the owners and masters of the Roman Catholic Church and its trustees occurs every year. The word admiralty is also a 16th century word formed by the Jesuit College of the English and transmitted through the Shakespeare portfolio from two Latin words, ad meaning for the purpose of, and miris meaning to wonder at, to be surprised at, or something strange. Hence, the literal original meaning of admiralty law is law for the purpose of surprise, wonder, and strangeness, or simply occult law. Within the modern Roman court system today, maritime law in ritual and function still exists. The accused is placed in a dock, signifying them as being converted into a vessel at times, and goods or property at other times. And the charges and evidence presented to the court is listed on a docket, meaning a manifest of goods delivered, otherwise known as a bill of lading between a consignee and consignor, that if no rejected or returned means commercially that the one who has received the goods, being the accused or consignee, is now liable for any draft bill, and the charges against the accused, sometimes called a respondent, or sometimes being called a respondent, being another maritime term, is listed in what is called the bill of indictment, representing a draft bill for goods being charged, being the charges listed on the docket delivered to the vessel being accused. So I'm just reading through this so you can get a sense of some terms of shipping that they apply into our legal system. This is going to lead up to you understanding that you are considered a dead vessel floating on the sea, even though you're on land. That's how they gain ownership of us, of you. The international jurisdiction of maritime law of the sea is the law of the monarch of Great Britain. The Vatican banking system, under this, everyone and everything is recognized as a boat or vessel that is floating around in a sea of space. We are dead entities to them. As vessels, we have been captured in the Crown's global system of commerce, the shipping and movement of everyone and everything on the planet. Through this act of 1871 that I've talked about in the past, we were secretly taken from law of the land, our sovereign right, to the law of the sea, no rights. Here's the difference between the two of them. So we have administrative court and we have common law court. In administrative court, there's no jury. Common law, jury of one's peers. Administrative court, law of the sea. Common law, law of the land. Admiralty, maritime commercial jurisdiction versus common law, people's jurisdiction. To settle the account in a commercial transaction versus upholding unalienable rights. One is a dead entity, one is for living people. Okay? Admiralty law is for dead entities, common law for living people. So it's commerce versus justice. Judge takes bar association oath to serve the bar, dead entity, or judge serves judicially for the living. Okay, you follow this back and forth. Officers of the court have private surety bond versus officers of the court have public statutory bond. Officers of the court has full commercial liability in a private capacity versus officers of the court have limited liability in public capacity. Those are just, it gives you an idea of the scope of, I guess you would say, treason against all of humanity, how they were able to use folks' words and contract law to enslave us. So therefore, if we are governed and we are defined and labeled and controlled and rolled and dictated to by written language, in my opinion, when Russel-Jay Gould and David Wynn Miller created this quantum grammatical construct, they now had them by the balls because they're going to use their own tools and definitions against them. So as we now know, under maritime law, the country is considered to be under a state of martial law at all times, where there's no nation and no constitution. So believe it or not, we have been under a state of martial law at all times. When Trump said that we only live under the illusion of democracy, this is what he's talking about. They create a visual for us in the legal system to degrees where, or even the political system, where it looks like we do have democracy. Those are just disguises where behind the scenes, when they get their way, they're using these type of systems to get their way. That's why you're scratching your heads as these people, criminals, rapists, murderers, thieves, whoever they are, walking away without any consequences because they can do it according to the way they have written the code with which we all have to live by. One thing I never understood this or never even noticed it. Clear indication of maritime law is shown on the gold fringes that you see around the flag. That's when you know we're operating. I can never figure out why we had those gold fringes on the flags that always hung behind Obama. If you look now, I don't think you'll see fringes on the flags anymore behind Trump. The gold fringe on the flag is not the same flag that is approved for the Constitutional Republic of the USA, Code Title 4, Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, which we know as the Title 4 flag. The fourth color, yellow, is not approved in the code. The tassels on the flag are also symbolic of maritime law. In 1913, the Federal Reserve was created, which turned debt into money. This is where it gets interesting. I think this is a good way that she laid this out, so you understand how you are treated as chattel and you are a bargaining chip for the cabal powers, the Rothschild criminal bankers, the central banking system. So now that we, human cargo, were the chattels that backed the debt from the Federal Reserve that was created in 1913, they now owned every citizen as stock. Okay? So countries are ships. We, the people, are cargo. We're human cargo. Through this fraudulent birth certificate system, we're stocks at birth to be traded in their corporation. We are the collateral for the debt that they created out of fiat currency, not gold, not silver, just a piece of paper with ink on it. So we're the collateral for the debt until the day we die. Then they issue us a death certificate. So know this, when you're born, your parents register you with the government, and believe it or not, folks, you're registered as a corporation. That birth certificate has your name on it. It's in all capital letters. There are two places where you'll find your name in capital letters, on your tombstone and on your birth certificate. If you sign that birth certificate, you are signing your child away as a proof that this child is a dead entity. Therefore, human laws don't apply. That's how they get away with it. So now your child, and I don't know of any place where somebody just refused to sign it. They actually, in any hospital, will not allow you to take that baby out of that hospital until you sign a birth certificate. But who's going to ask? I wouldn't have the wherewithal now or prior to know to ask. Anyways, that's, of course, the United States of America wasn't all capitalized either. Only the first letters until they created the United States Corporation. Now you see the United States capitalized. So anyways, in my opinion, you're really signing your death certificate, not your birth certificate. So a few years after that, your corporation will receive a taxpayer ID called a Social Security number. This can be used as collateral for the government to acquire debt. That's right. You and your labor, your time, energy is now what backs up the government debt. How do you like that? So that when the Federal Reserve was created, it became the longest running Ponzi scheme to this day due to the fractional debt system that was strategically created to grow and never, ever to be paid off. If you think about this, folks, a bank has $1, but they have $10, they can loan out $10 to 10 different people. Each one get $1. It's now considered $10 of debt. Nothing backing it. And if everybody made a run on the bank at that point in time, then the thing will go out of business. The debt can never be paid off. It's just it's impossible to pay it off, the principal and interest. The debt system is built for one thing, and that's survivability. That's why these guys always go blowing countries up, blowing shit up, creating economic swings, downturns. They have to always do something to cause destruction on the planet so they could blame a war or a catastrophe or something on how the economic system just got beat up and crushed, and everything you worked for, they come in and take it back from you. Pennies on the dollar, repossess it, whatever, because you're not making any money, lost your job, lost your house. Then they pump the economy back up, pump the markets up, and then they sell it to you at high price again. They've been doing this over and 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 over, and it'll never stop until somebody puts a stop to it. This is the game. So the root of their deception began within our language structure. That's where it all started. Everything we've been taught is false. Q always says it's time to expand your thinking. So in 1988, the mathematical interface for language was discovered, known as a quantum language, parsed syntax grammar. The man who made the discovery was Judge David Wynn Miller. When he made the discovery, he worked alongside Russel-Jay, Gould. These guys were both federal judges. They created a new periodic table of elements, which is so genius in construct that they destroyed the previous elemental chart. In 2002 and 2003, Gould uses quantum language to rewrite a global quantum banking constitution to move foreign commerce on the planet. That saved the U.S. $17 trillion in debt, and Russell's work was referred to as genius by the Department of Energy, who holds a Q clearance, by the way, Department of Energy. All comes back to Q. So the mathematical formula for now time quantum grammar is 1 + 2 = 3, 3 - 2 = 1, 2 times 3 = 6, 6 divided by 3 = 2. It can be read the same forward and backward. No matter how the words are on paper, it all is going to read and mean the same. So they've weakened and corrupted the conveyance of our language to illegally harvest every one of us from birth. We're cargo to them and stocks in their illegal corporation. Quantum language ends it all. Quantum language will stop theft, cheating, fraud, slavery, and war. It is a claim on our life, and it restores the law of the land. There's no past or future tense in quantum language. It's always in present tense, now time. So this construct turns language into math, and no country has ever gone to war over a math problem. So using quantum grammar means that every document in every language reads the exact same from top to bottom or bottom to top. It creates an evidentiary mathematical fact, and when infinity when they unwind it. It'd be very, very important to remember this as we move along. So quantum grammar is really just math. It's writing and speaking correct sentence structure in present tense. It is based on fact. An invalid sentence is an illusion, a lie. There are no illusions within a quantum language. Since a quantum language is just math, it has mathematical interface. In fact, it certifies all 5,000 languages, frontwards and backwards. What makes up a proper sentence in any language? It's parse, syntax, and grammar. So after registering this new language, every current contract in the world was deemed to be in grammatical fraud. It was with this fraud that Gould and Miller uncovered the largest national security secret in the world. Everything in the past 8,500 years has been a complete lie. Quantum grammar changed the game. It's the biggest kept secret until now. When this becomes publicly unveiled, there will be a world reset in the financial system, our courts, laws, education, language, and so much more. We are going quantum. On 21st of December 2018, POTUS signed a National Quantum Initiative into law, a bipartisan legislation that accelerates the development of the quantum information science and brings a coordinated approach for quantum R&D. In the White House did put out a tweet, and it says, tonight at Real Donald Trump signed a National Quantum Initiative Act into law to help drive American leadership. And on December 21st year is going to be pretty important, folks. Trump has talked about an early Christmas present. December 25 keeps coming up, and I can't put my finger on it, but